Husband Material Podcast. Husband Standards. Wow, a wife is customizable. So obviously, men and women are different, obviously. So, of course, our contributions are going to be different. What we bring to the table is going to be different. It should be different because, it doesn't make sense to have two of the same things, right? You don't need two bowls of potato salad. You only need one bowl of potato salad. And hopefully the other bowl is something else, like maybe macaroni or tuna casserole or something, right? So a lot of females out here love to throw out the whole idea of like men and women are the same, right? That whatever applies to them applies to us, and it's like no, it doesn't work that way. Nor should it, because we are different, so we can do different things. Since we can do different things should be different for us, right? The funny thing is, guys tend to prefer things to be simpler. Guys are simpler, so that's why a husband is simpler than a wife, because a husband, he only needs to meet, I'll use the term bare minimum. He only needs to meet the bare minimum to be a husband. A wife, since she's customizable, she needs to, meet the standards of the husband. Now, even though the husband is pretty much, bare minimum, right? As an example, bare minimum standard, protective provider is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like loser or anything. I'm talking about like a good quality guy, who got his shit together and stuff like that, who's a protector and a provider. So he brings that to the table, which is already good as, as a start, as a base. And you have to bring, and then of course, the wife brings the extra stuff that he doesn't have, or should be bringing stuff that he doesn't have. That way she has, some extra value on top of whatever value she has to him. She'll always bring more value. But the husband, like I said, even though he's simpler, there's a standard for what he should be doing as a husband. Doesn't mean that every chick, right, every woman, by default, can easily be a wife to that type of guy, just because there's a standard for guys. You would think though, like it would seem kind of logical, is if the guy is just pretty much just a protector and a provider, for example, that's mainly the bare minimum, right? So he's just bare minimum. Why should the chick bring more, right? Why should she be more than the bare minimum, right? Why can't we be equals? In that type of regards, right? But the thing is that just because we are simpler, doesn't mean that that's what we like in the opposite, right? In the opposite sex, we like more, we like extra. For example, a guy would dress conservative, like he ain't going to be dressing in a certain type of way where he's showing off too much of his physique or whatnot, or too much skin, as it were. But doesn't mean he wouldn't like a female, right? A lady who is more showing off her body, her skin and whatnot, because what we like is typically the opposite of what we are, right? If I'm tall, then obviously the opposite would be short, so I would like shorter ladies, and vice versa, right? And chicks tend to like guys who are the opposite, or at least they're better at things than they are, which is kind of like opposite, but just because it's like the opposite as in deficient, right? Guys like collecting things they don't have, which is why they like to have multiple chicks. Chicks, ladies, they like to upgrade, so they always want to replace something, which is why they'll replace their flat ass with a BBL, or their small lips with big giant, clown lips, and the list goes on, right? Their God-given face, and then they'll just replace it with some Barbie doll filter type thing. It is funny to see a chick who wears makeup also put on a filter on her phone when she records or takes pictures. It's like, what? For all that, just don't take pictures. If you truly don't like the way you look, don't take pictures, because the rest of us is not gonna like it either. Like, it's just stupid. Like, beauty is an eye of the beholder, so we should be able to decide if we like what we see or not. Not you try to decide for us. That's ridiculous. But anyway, marriage is a business, right? And as a husband, you got to be able to manage the business. That's why the whole being a husband thing is, there's a standard, right? Because the way for it to function, you have to meet a standard, right? There has to be, what they call it in the business, regulations. There needs to be regulations, right? Regulation standards. So a guy needs to have, to live by standards. I mean, society is based off of rules, right? Standards, structure, order. That's why things work, because we took the time to think of like how things should work, how things should be, and then we tried it and it worked. So we keep on doing it. Just like marriage works. Just like, the man leads, the woman follows, has worked for thousands of years. Because it works. Trust me, they tried different versions, right? Women lead, men follow, and it didn't work. It's not because the men didn't want to follow. It's just because the women couldn't lead, right? Because mainly they were leading through their emotions, not through logic, so they tend to make a lot of bad decisions. They tend to jump to conclusions, make assumptions. They tend to do, and that's the thing, is just because that's just the way they are. Can they learn to be better? Of course. Just like a monkey can learn, to be a drag racer, or a monkey could learn quantum physics, but is it in a monkey's nature to understand and learn quantum physics? No. So, just like can a fish learn to fly? It could, but it's a fish. Its nature is to swim, not fly, right? Just like us humans, could we fly, right? Yeah, we could. We created ways to allow us to travel through the air, but naturally we're not built to fly, right? So clearly, men and women and birds are not the same, obviously. But it's funny when it comes to male and female species. Females want to act like we are the same. Just because y'all can learn to do the stuff we do and can mimic us doesn't mean you are us. We do what you can't. Always have been. We always did what you couldn't do. Just like you always do what we can't do. Y'all ungrateful that y'all have the ability to give birth. That's something y'all can do that we can't. But you want to do what we can do. Oh, I could work a 9 to 5. Yeah, you could work a 9 to 5, but you're not built for long hour work and manual labor. You're built more for simpler things, easier things, not for heavy duty work, right? Just because you can be on a phone or be in front of a computer, doesn't mean you have to be. Just because you can, right? Just like a dog can use a phone or a computer, but doesn't mean it has to do any of those. And of course you might use the counter argument where it's like, well, just because women can give birth doesn't mean they have to make babies. It's like, that's true. You don't have to make babies, but it would be a good idea if you did. Just like guys don't have to work hard to make money, but they do. Just like they don't have to share the money that they worked hard for with ladies, but they do. So it's like, yes, it's true, we don't have to do certain things, but it is better, especially if you pay attention, it is better when we do. It's better when a guy takes care of a woman, and it's better when the woman makes babies. It's just better. better for society, better for them, especially if they're together. Right? The man, takes care of her. She takes care of him, if you know what I mean. And then they make babies. Then they take care of the babies. The babies grow up to do the same thing they did. And then that's how society works. That's why it works. That's why we've been alive for so long, because of structure and rules, and men lead, women follow, and so forth and so forth, right? So of course, the husband position has to be standard. It has to work a certain way, or it just doesn't work at all. This is why when you have the woman in charge, the wife in the lead, it doesn't really work out. Can it last per se? Yeah, but it doesn't work out. Like, it doesn't work the way it should work. Just because two people are willing to tolerate each other for a long, long time doesn't mean what they're doing is working. 'Cause I've seen many times where there'll be like old, like, it's a trope, right? It's the idea, well, not a trope, obviously it would be based on some reality, but I will always see, like, in shows and movies and stuff like that, the idea of men and women, old men and women together talking about, being asked like, oh, wow, how they have such a long-lasting, successful relationship, and they're always saying negative stuff, right? They're always, complaining about each other and this, that, and third, talking about, like, arguments or, whatnot. It's always interesting to see, like, the different dynamics, but it's always like the idea of this, like, we just tolerate, or we just gave up on wanting better, so that's why we're together, because we just accept our fate, right? We accept the situations where we accept the flaws of one another and this, that, and third. And it's like, which is logical, idea to understand that you're not going to be perfect, right? If anything, y'all relationships are like jobs. You hate your job, but you need it, right? You need it as in because it has use. It's useful to you. If a relationship is extremely useful, then of course you're gonna try to keep it and should try to keep it. When it's not useful, then of course there's no point in being in a relationship, right? Because if you go to a job and it turns out that you're not getting paid at all, it will obviously make sense to quit and find a job that does pay, right? Because you're not trying to work for free. Same goes for, like, being in a relationship, right? You don't want to be in a relationship doing something for somebody else all the time and they do nothing in return. Not saying that everything has to be equal, just saying that, fair should be fair. If you're doing stuff for somebody, they should be doing stuff for you. But some people tend to be ungrateful and they tend to want more than they deserve and blah, blah, blah. So there's certain issues that come up with certain things. But this is why somebody in the relationship has to be in charge, has to know what they want, what they need, and then make sure that whoever they interact with, is willing to follow those standards, willing to be flexible. So that's why it's like, yeah, a man's position is, in a relationship, because men choose relationships, women choose sex. So the man has to be in charge of the relationship. And if he's not in charge of the relationship, he shouldn't even be in a relationship if he's not going to be in charge. It doesn't really work too well. The lady is being in charge. It works better when the guy's in charge. So that's why it's like, I recommend that's for a different topic. But the thing is, we're obviously going with the whole, you chose the right woman, and she'll follow your lead in this answer. So of course, you need to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Living up to the standards of the days of old, right? Making sure that you manage the marriage like a business, right? Making sure that everybody's taken care of, making sure everything goes in order. There's a hierarchy. It's you, the mother, the son, then the daughter, right? That type of dynamic, or the oldest to the youngest, hierarchy. The standards of being a husband, besides being a protector and a provider, is of course being a problem solver. The better you are at solving problems, the better. The better you are at learning from other people's mistakes, the better, right? Don't get into the habit of making your own mistakes. We get it. Yes, no one's perfect. We all, we all make mistakes and we learn from it and should learn. But your life is easier if you're learning from other people. So as a guy, you definitely should be looking at people who, men who are married and, looking for information in general. Knowledge is power, right? You should know how to be a husband. Even though it's simple to be a husband, because again, there's certain standards. So as long as you do the bare minimum, you are a husband. You are good for the position. But it doesn't hurt to be extra, right? To do more, to be overqualified. Most guys qualified to be a husband, but it would be better to be overqualified. So of course, doing stuff like making more money is always a good thing to do. Being great at solving problems, being compassionate, understanding emotions, right? Understanding, female nature, understanding, human behaviors, human nature in general. So that way, you know how to deal with, guys and gals, right? Be able to, handle raising kids, helping raising kids, and deal with your wife and whatnot. It's very important to know these things. And the thing is about being a husband is you also have to know how to essentially on the job training your wife, because the wife is customizable. So if you're a doctor, then she needs to understand your work schedule, be able to work within your work schedule, right? It's never a good idea for your wife to be working. It should be, because the thing is, no one should get married. Well, there's a couple different reasons, but no guy should get married with the intention of his wife still working. That makes no sense, right? You should get to the point where she doesn't need to work, right? You marrying her is her retirement. She's retiring from single life, retiring from working a 9 to 5. You are supposed to be her retirement, right? And then when you retire, that's your retirement, right? When you retire from working, that's your retirement. When you're an old man, you're a grandpa, and you get to retire as a grandpa. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? That's the standard. So you need to make sure you're working, or what you do for work, or what you do to get resources is more than enough for her not to have to work. That way it's more of a choice, and she could always work from home. And that should be a goal. That should be something you set up. As the leader, you should definitely set that up, right? Set it up for her. Make it where she has, because that's the thing, she should have things to do, like things that makes it hard for her to, need a job, right? She shouldn't be in a position where she feels like she needs one, because everything should be taken care of, right? She definitely shouldn't be in a position where she has so much free time that she can do wrong, right? She can do things that is not beneficial to the relationship, right? Like cheating and stuff like that. So, things like that. I mean, if she's gonna cheat, she's gonna cheat, but at least don't make it easy for her. That's what I'm trying to say. Make sure that she's busy being a wife, that she doesn't have time to be a cheater, right? Or she doesn't have time to become an ex-wife. So that's important. Also, understanding her, her emotions, understanding her logic. The better you know her, the better you can get along with her. There shouldn't be a lot of mysteries. when it comes to a relationship. You should know what to expect from her. Like I said, if you're a doctor, she needs to know, your work schedule. She needs to know that, you might not have that much free time. So the free time you do have is precious, right? It's valuable. It needs to not be wasted. She definitely can't make it a habit of trying to waste your time. She needs to be able to understand and be able to communicate with you. Also, it's beneficial for her to be able to understand your work, right? Understand your job. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't understand your job, doesn't understand what you do for a living. She should know what you do for a living, especially since she's depending on you to be her her protector and provider. She needs to understand what you do to be a protector and provider. It's always good to know how to do things, because communication is important. So communicating with a doctor would be different than communicating with a police officer. Because, for example, a police officer is probably going to have, he probably uses, a lot of code words, like 10-4 and stuff like that. So he uses a lot of police-related terms, probably even some legal terms, and it's important to understand them, so that way when he does use these terms and he speaks in a certain type of way, you're able to understand him. And it's important to understand him, because then that makes it easier to get along. A lot of times I see people having issues largely because of miscommunication. I've had some situations with some ladies where I'm talking with them, and there'll be a misunderstanding, and it just throws the whole entire conversation into a totally different direction than it didn't need to be. And it's very rare for some ladies to apologize. And when you find a chick that is willing to take responsibility, accountability, right, apologize, right? Some guys I be seeing a lot talking about that. Oh yeah, their girlfriend or wife don't say sorry. It's like, don't apologize. They don't admit when they're wrong. It's like, that's not a good trait. That's a bad trait. That's an issue. That's a malfunction right there. It's like, no. She needs to be able to take responsibility, accountability. Because one of the things is, especially when it comes to like when you hire an employee, right? Especially if you're hiring somebody to do a job and you expect them to do the job without being managed or micromanaged, or having somebody constantly telling them what to do, right? Basically, you need somebody who can not self-govern, but can work without supervision, right? So that's important. Be autonomous, right? Having somebody who can work autonomously. Then that's important, right? You need somebody who can be responsible for their own actions. So pick better. That's very important. You gotta vet your wife just like you would vet somebody, to work for your company, right? You don't want somebody who will steal from your company, right? You want somebody who will come in late, somebody who doesn't do the work, somebody who doesn't believe in your company, right? Doesn't believe in the reason your company exists. You don't want somebody, who hates your company, working at your company. That'll make no sense, right? That's an enemy behind enemy lines, right? You let the fox into the hen house. That don't make sense. Just like it wouldn't make sense to be in a relationship with a woman or a female that doesn't like men, right? That doesn't like males, the opposite sex, right? It's like, you're a man hater, but you're trying to marry me, right? You're trying to be in a relationship with me, but you're a man hater. That don't make sense. If you can make it work, you can make it work, but it's just logically, that don't make sense, right? Just like if somebody was racist against Asian people, it wouldn't make sense for them to be in a relationship with somebody who's Asian when they're racist against them, right? It doesn't make sense, like logically.
L2
We want to make sure that the relationship doesn't fail, right? Because, like I said, it's not that different from a job, from hiring somebody to work for you. You want them to be the best candidate for the position. So you have to treat it like a business. They gotta have responsibilities and duties that you need them to follow. But and of course you need them to be flexible. That's why being a wife is customizable, right? There's flexibility there. But the position of a husband is pretty much static because since he's the leader, he has to lead always. Right? He has to lead. He has to solve 90% of the problems. He has to, he has to make sure there's always, the family always has resources. The family is always safe. That everything's planned out. You're supposed to have, at least a 10-year plan for the family. Every 10 years, you should be looking 10 years ahead and making sure that everything works out right. Kids shouldn't be an accident. They should be in a deliberate decision to have kids, right? Just like there should be a deliberate decision for you to be married, a deliberate decision for anything you do in the relationship. Got to be in charge. Got to have as much control as possible, because if not, the business will go out of control. And if the business is out of control, then it goes down under. So you gotta be responsible. That's the thing. You gotta take responsibility, accountability. Anything that goes wrong in the in the marriage, you have to take responsibility of it as as the husband, right? It falls on you. We could always be childish, right, and be like, well, my wife did this, the kids did that. It's like, it I can't control them. Blah blah blah. It's like that's one, that's incorrect, and two, it falls on you. Their actions are a reflection of your leadership, right? If your wife doesn't behave, that's your fault, because clearly you allowed her to behave the way she's behaving a lot. It'd be different if it's like for like 2-3 years she's been good, right? She's been behaving a certain way, but then suddenly one day she starts acting up. Okay, that can happen, but of course you should be able to handle it and be able to correct it. But if you allow it to keep going, keep getting worse, that's a problem. It's just like keeping an employee that keeps coming in late once a week, because of circumstances, is understandable. Life happens, shit happens, right? But if they're late every day, that's a problem. It's like, no, you need to try to fix that, right? Let's say they'll be like, oh, I wake up, I oversleep a lot. Okay, then you need to go sleep earlier and wake up earlier. So let's try to fix that. Let's try to make it where you're not coming in late. Because if you're supposed to be here at 7, but let's say you wake up at 6:30, but you keep coming here at 7:15, so you keep being 15 minutes late, then you might need to try to wake up 15 minutes early then, right? 15 to 30 minutes early, just in case traffic or something. So try to wake up a little bit earlier. Say I was trying to wake up at 6:30, or even at 6, wake up at 5:30, 5 o'clock, right? Wake up extra early. Wake up early so that way you can get ready, do what you gotta do, and if you have some free time before you get to work, all right, then watch some TV or something. Watch some YouTube videos. Listen to music or something for that time. The point is just don't be in a situation where you're doing everything last minute and trying to rush and then still end up late. Like, try to solve the problem. This is what I'm trying to say. It's like, try to solve the problem. If your wife is not willing to solve the problem, then you need to be able to solve it for her. And if it's hard to solve the problem for her because she is the problem, right? Then, well, you gotta solve that problem. And usually that will require you to get rid of her and replace her with somebody who can do the job. And that's the thing, always remember that. You always have the option to hire and fire, right? But we're gonna go with the idea that she's perfect, she's great, she does everything she's supposed to do, so that's awesome. So that's one less thing you gotta worry about. So you don't have to micromanage. Be prepared to micromanage if need be, but always try to make it where when you're micromanaging, it's for the purpose of educating, so that way you don't have to manage them, right? Your wife should already know what to do when you're not around. She should always be thinking what you would do in certain situations, right? Like, let's say there's $1,000 bill and there's a $20 expense, and she has $1,000, right? Logically, she should put the $1,000 into the $1,000 expense because it's the bigger expense, right? Especially if it's a bill, definitely should pay the bill first. The other thing is probably just like $20 phone bill or something. It's like you can live without that. That's less of an issue, less of a problem. But if she's the type of person that will go pay the $20 to the point where she only has like 980 left from the 1,000, or 9,800 something. No, 9,980 left over. So now she can't even pay the other one. So now she has to wait until she gets 20 to try to pay it off. It's like, you should have paid off the bigger amount first and worry about the smaller amount later. But, you know what I mean? So you definitely need to make sure you're able to teach by example, obviously, but of course through actual direct teaching, so that way she can make better decisions. And that goes the same for your kids, you know. Because especially if you're good, because the thing is, as a man, you're supposed to be good at what you do. You're supposed to be good at problem solving and making decisions. And you definitely should teach, right? Cross training, right? Teach your wife how to be better at solving problems, and she's supposed to teach you, you know. Well, it's better to teach, right? To share knowledge. So if she has skills that she can share with you, that she should, right? Skill sharing. So if she's good at cooking, which would be ideal, right? To be good at cooking, and you're not that good, she can always help you improve by teaching, right? Just like when it comes to languages, I always thought that was, I still do. I mean, always thought that was cute when a chick would ask me to teach her, a language like English or something, and she'll try to teach me her language in return, right? So I always thought that was cute. It's like, yeah, you want me to teach you something, you teach me something. Or they'll ask me to teach them something else, right? It doesn't have to be language based. But then I'll offer to teach them a language, or I'll offer to teach them something. So it's always nice to share knowledge, share information. I'm always down to improve people. And that's the other thing, right? Improving your family, right? Improving your wife. It should always be able to upgrade her, right? Do a lot of on-the-job training, right? Learn how to do the things you like in and out of bed, obviously, right? Because she should be essentially your second in command, right? When you're not around, she needs to be able to make the decisions that you would make, not make, other decisions, especially not bad ones. You want her to make the best decisions, so obviously you need to teach her how you make decisions. So it's important to communicate, be able to articulate your ideas and your beliefs, and she's supposed to adapt to you, to how you do things. That's how the symbiotic relationships, work out. She needs to adapt to how you do things, whether you're a cop or a lawyer or a firefighter, or businessman, or I don't know, trust fund baby, whatever, right? Whatever you are, astronaut, whatever, right? President of the United States. She needs to be able to adapt to what you're doing, to your lifestyle. If you're average or if you're rich, millionaire, billionaire, whatever, right? She needs to be able to adapt to that and be able to fit in. Because even though you're all together, it's still your life. And it's a life that you built, right? It's a life that you created. You created whatever you created, right? If you become a doctor and you're really great at it, right? You created that legacy, right? That status, that position. You don't want to get in a relationship with somebody that's just going to ruin it, right? Ruin all your hard work because you worked hard to be in that position, So make sure you understand that if you're going to go the marriage route, which we're assuming you are, you pick somebody who is willing to follow you, willing to learn from you, willing to be part of your life, not try to include you in their life or treat you like an accessory or treat you like a bank account or, treat you like a partner, that type of nonsense, an equal, all that nonsense. Like, no. You're in charge. You're the husband. You're the one that's driving. It's like being in a car. You're driving. She's on the passenger side. She's navigating. She's there for the ride. She's not there to drive. Unless you want to let her, but it always works out better that the guy drives, right? The guy's in charge. And you definitely want to make sure that she respects you, right? She respects your decisions, that there's no pretending that she agrees with you. She should definitely agree with you because she understands, and understanding is very important. You need to be able to find somebody you can communicate with well, not just get along with in good and bad or just, tolerate. It shouldn't be that type of position because it's the same thing as having an employee. You tolerate them because they at least come in on time. They're at least here. They at least don't complain about how much they get paid, but they're not really that good at the job, right? They barely want to do any overtime or do anything different than what they were initially hired for. So they're not that flexible. You don't want to be with somebody who's not that flexible in more ways than one, right? You want somebody who's flexible socially, morally, mentally, physically, right? Who can adjust accordingly. Because if you go from being, let's say, a banker, but then you start getting into investments, like real estate or something, and then you start making a lot of money, and then you create some type of tech company, right? So then now you're a tech billionaire, and she was with you the whole time. She has to change and adapt with that, right? She can't still try to be, acting like she's, married to a banker when now you're a, multi-billion-dollar CEO of a company, right? She has to change and adapt because now you're a CEO, right? Now you're a billionaire. So now she has to adapt to that lifestyle, to that different view. And ironically, most females can't handle that. I've dated some chicks where, I talked about, what I'm going to do with my life. And some of them couldn't handle it. Some of them was like admitted that, like, oh yeah, you're going to be doing a lot, and that's not what I want for my life. I want a nice, simple life. You're going to have this whole billionaire lifestyle, and that's too much for me. It's like, okay, at least you're honest. At least we didn't waste all these years, right, in time, being together just to end up like, hey, I'm a billionaire and now you want to leave me? Like, that'd be unfortunate for me to work hard to achieve something, and that thing that I achieve ends up, you know, ruining something, right? Ends up costing me something that I didn't want to pay, right? I didn't want to sacrifice for. So it'll suck to sacrifice a relationship for, a career or large sums of money. And a lot of females have a habit of doing that lately, giving up their future happiness for, temporary happiness. So they'll accept the bullshit that they're being fed right now and live their best life now and end up living their worst life later, which is when life is worse. See, when they're young and strong and whatnot, they should be planning for the future. That they should be using that time, their youth, to obtain the best guys, the best people to be associated with. So when they are old, they're better off socially, right? They're better off because there's people that'll be able to look out for them, take care of them, right? When they're not capable of doing it for themselves, because money has limits, right? If you suddenly have if a chick has a heart attack, she's gonna be grateful to have a boyfriend or a husband at least, right? At least a boyfriend, right? Or a guy friend to be there for her, to get her to the hospital, right? To save her life, right? Or let's say she's horny and she's in her 60s. She'll be grateful to have some guy that'll gladly fuck her, right? Logically. So we gotta be logical about stuff. But ladies nowadays are literally trying to get everything now, not realizing that they're going to regret it later, because they're not going to have it. Everything they have now, they're not really going to have later. And most of what they have now, they're not even going to like later. Later, they're going to regret it. They're going to be like, oh man, this is stupid. I got this big house for nothing. I got these cars for nothing. I traveled the world for nothing. Yeah, it was fun and all, but that's it. I traveled, I saw the world, and I still feel empty. I still feel unfulfilled. I still feel unhappy. I feel like something's missing. It's like, well, duh, something's missing. Which was your purpose, right? Which was something that gives your life meaning, which makes it where it's like, even if you did that thing for 1,000 years, you wouldn't regret it. You'd be like, oh my God, 1,000 years doing this one thing that I like doing was amazing. As opposed to be like, damn, I spent 40 plus years doing something I hate. It's like, you hated it? I thought you loved it. Yeah, I did technically at the time, but realistically, nah, I didn't love it. Because if I think about it, I've missed out on so many things I could have done. And there's a lot of things I didn't do because of the stuff that I did do. That's the thing. People don't regret the things they did more often. It's the stuff they didn't do that they tend to regret. So, it's easy not to regret having a job and making a lot of money. But regretting doing anything useful with that money, or the time you spent working, you could have done other things instead. That you will regret. So the things you don't do, you'll regret. So don't regret things, guys. Do better.